Hello viewers, yes, this is Ranjana ma'am and you are watching, yes, it's mine as well as your channel, and this time it is for my ISC students. Quite a few of you had requested that I should explain Indigo. So here I am, you know what's coming. Please subscribe to my channel if you have not done up till now, and don't forget to press the like button. So Indigo, written by who other than Satyajit Ray, the most versatile man of our times, though he is dead quite a few years back, but of the 20th century, I should say, after Tagore. So like Tagore, he was a famous writer. He was of course writer, that is what is common, but he had talents in different fields. Like Tagore was a poet, he was a writer, he was a singer, he was a painter, and Satyajit Ray also has his versatility in different fields. He was most versatile in the field of direction. So he brought us the Oscar for Lifetime Achievement Award. So he is known for his short horror stories. Even in the previous ISC syllabus, not the ones which you all are reading, but in the previous ISC syllabus also there was one story, Fritz. That was also a horror story, which gave us, when I taught it or read it for the first time, I had goosebumps. And even this one, this is also a horror story dealing with the paranormal, ghostly activities. So first a little bit of the story Indigo in brief, and then we will proceed to the text. So you have it in your page 164. The last paragraph. The short story Indigo is a first person account of a haunting experience. And here what you find, that no one comes and haunts you, rather you become the character. So when the main character, so the main protagonist is Aniruddh, spends an unplanned night in an old bungalow. So these Dak Bunglows are said to be haunted. He experiences an almost paranormal phenomena. Indigo is replete with instances of Ray's masterful use of horror and suspense, which has the ability to capture the attention of his readers right till the end of the story. Yeah, this is very true. It mesmerizes us, it charms us, his stories. And even Indigo, it will keep you glued to the end. So you would be wanting to know what happened, and finally what happened. So without wasting any more time, let's start. Indigo. My name is Aniruddh Bose. I am 29 years old and a bachelor. So this is how he introduces himself. The main protagonist is Aniruddh, 29 years old, and he is not married, he is a bachelor. For the last 8 years, I have been working in an advertising agency in Calcutta. So in those days when Satyajit Ray wrote it, it was Calcutta, not Kolkata. Kolkata is the original name, but the Britishers had made it Calcutta, and Satyajit Ray, when he wrote this story, it was called Calcutta only. The place was called Calcutta. Calcutta, the city of joy, the place where I belong. With the salary I get, I live in reasonable comfort in a flat in Sardar Shankar Road. So this is where the main character lives, Sardar Shankar Road, and in a flat. The flat has 2 south facing rooms and is on the ground floor. 2 years ago, I bought an ambassador car. So it seems he leads quite a comfortable life. He's got a flat, he's bought a car. For the last 8 years, he's doing a good job in an advertising agency. I do a bit of writing in my spare time. So the main protagonist is also a writer. During his leisure, he writes stories. 3 of my stories have been published in magazines and have been well appreciated by my acquaintances. So people who know me, they have appreciated the stories. But I know I cannot make a living by writing alone, but he is not so confident enough to give up his job and concentrate fully on writing, because he knows that I cannot make a living to support me if I give up my job and start full-time writing. So this is his part-time hobby. For the last few minutes, I haven't been writing at all. Instead, I have read a lot about indigo plantations in Bengal and Bihar in the 19th century. Yeah, in the 19th century, indigo plantation and lots of movements had taken place. The indigo planters, the Britishers, they came and they forced the Indians to cultivate indigo, and then they took all the what should we say, profits, and the Indian farmers, they were at a loss. And finally they appealed to Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi came, and then there was a lot of movement, and finally the Britishers had to relent. And in the meantime, Germany had introduced synthetic indigo. So then the Britishers thought that it would be a real loss, so they gave up indigo planting. So it was a victory for the Indian movement. So I am something of an authority on the subject now. So he has gained quite mastery over the subject of indigo planting. How the British exploited the poor peasants, how the peasants rose in revolt, and how finally, with the invention of synthetic indigo in Germany, the cultivation of indigo was wiped out from our country. So I teach in CBSE also. There is a chapter called Indigo. So that is not a story, that is how the indigo, the movement which went on, the farmers' protests and Gandhiji getting involved in it, and how finally indigo plantation was wiped out from the country. So in CBSE I teach that, and this is here a story with the background of indigo plantation, right? All this I know by heart. It is to describe the terrible experience which instilled in me this interest in indigo that I have taken up my pen today. So why has he started writing today? Because he wants to describe the terrible experience, his terrible experience, and that is why he starts writing. So what was the terrible experience? Something paranormal. At this point, I must tell you something about my past. My father was a well-known physician, that means a doctor, in Munger, a town in Bihar. Yeah, Munger is a town in Bihar. This is where I was born, and that is where I did my schooling in a missionary school. So he got educated in a convent school in Munger. I have a brother 5 years older than me. He studied medicine in England and is now attached to a hospital in a suburb of London called Golders Green. He has no plans to retire to India. So he has no plans. His elder brother, 5 years his senior, he is a doctor in London and he doesn't intend to return to India. My father died when I was 16. So it was quite a tragedy because he was just 16. He had not started his own career when his father died. So soon after his death, my mother and I left Munger and came to Calcutta, where I stayed with my maternal uncle, mother's brother. So the mother comes to the house of her brother and then the boy gets educated there, mama. I went to St. Xavier's College and took my bachelor's degree. So he got his bachelor's degree. He studied and passed his BA exams from Xavier's. Soon after that, I got my job with the advertising agency, and after that, after just passing his bachelor's, getting his bachelor's degree, he gets a job. He doesn't get it so easily. He wouldn't have got it so easily just by his own credentials, but his uncle, that means the maternal uncle who had helped in bringing his upbringing. So my uncle's influence helped. So uncle maybe spoke to the boss that he is my nephew, see that he gets the job. But he says that my uncle's influence mattered, but I was also not unworthy. It's not that I am a zero and I get it because of my uncle's influence. I was a deserving candidate and my uncle's influence also helped. So he got this job, and for the last 8 years he has been working here. I had been a good student, I spoke English fluently, and most of all I had the ability to carry myself well in an interview. So he could face an interview very well, he was academically very good, and the best part was he could speak English very fluently. So how much more do you need? My early years in Munger had instilled certain habits in me which I have not been able to give up. So which are the habits? One of these was an overpowering desire to go away from the hectic life of Calcutta from time to time. So this reminds me of John Keats. So John Keats also had written a poem where he calls the city a pent. Pent is a place where pigs live. The enclosure for pigs is called a pent. So far away from city, pent. So he would go to the countryside and enjoy the beauties of nature. That is what John Keats used to enjoy. But here also this man, he wanted to go away from the city, escape the hectic life of Calcutta. I had done so several times ever since I bought my car. Yeah, so the car helped a lot. Ever since he bought the car, he would run away from the city life during weekends. On weekends, I made trips to Diamond Harbour, Port Canning and Hassanabad along the Dum road. Each time I had gone alone because, to be quite honest, I didn't really have a close friend in Calcutta. So, not one friend in Calcutta who could be your partner in these type of escapes. He was not very close to anyone who could be his companion. So not one in Calcutta. So what about the one in Munger? That is why Pramod's letter made me so happy. Pramod is a childhood friend. Pramod had been my classmate in Munger. After I came away to Calcutta, we continued to keep in touch for 3 or 4 years. This is what happens. Initially a lot of promises made and lots of writings, but slowly they get lesser and lesser, and finally the corresponding stops. Then perhaps it was I who stopped writing. Suddenly the other day when I came back from work, I found a letter from Pramod waiting for me on my desk. He had written from Dumka. Dumka, at this moment Dumka is in Jharkhand, but earlier it was a part of Bihar when there was no Jharkhand. When Jharkhand did not exist as a state, that time it was a part of Bihar only. When Satyajit Ray wrote this story, it was a part of Bihar, and now it is in Jharkhand. I have a job in the forest department here. I have my own quarters. Why don't you take a week's leave and come over? Dumka is said to be the land of red soil. So I have crossed Dumka to go to our ancestral village. On our way to our ancestral village, we have to cross Dumka. Some leave was due to me, so I spoke to my boss. So reading the letter, he decides that yes, I'll keep his request. So he goes and talks to his boss. And on the 27th of April, remember the date, 27th of April, I shall remember the date as long as I live. Why does he say this? Because of something which happens to him. I packed my bags and set off for Dumka. So what did he do? He packed off his bags, and to humor the request of his friend, he sets for Dumka. Pramod hadn't suggested that I go by car. It was my idea. Dumka was 200 miles away. So it would take about 5 or 6 hours at the most. So he calculates that at the most it will take 5 or 6 hours. I decided to have a big breakfast, set off by 10 and reach there before dusk. That is what he planned. But always plans don't go. Plans, and what happens, they are times when they don't really go according to plans. At least that was the plan, but there was a snag right in the start. Right in the start something happened. And when something like this happens, it's best you call it off. and go some other day, but no. I had my meal and was about to put a pan into my mouth when my father's old friend Uncle Mohit suddenly turned up. Uncle Mohit comes. He is a grave old man whom I was meeting after 10 years. So this meeting is after 10 years. That means last time when he had met, that time he was a student. And now he's got a job and 8 years in the job, but he's meeting Uncle Mohit after 10 years. So there was no question of giving him short shrift. So there was no question of trying to avoid him. I had to offer him tea and listen to him chat for over an hour, so he had to entertain our father's friend. I saw Uncle Mohit off and shoved my suitcase and bedding into the back seat of my car. Just then my ground floor, so he is late in starting, not as planned. He doesn't start as he had planned. And then someone comes. A ground floor neighbor, Bhola Babu, walked up with his 4-year-old son Pintu in tow. Where are you off to all by yourself? So where are you going all by yourself? Bhola Babu asked. When I told him, he said with some concern, but that's a long way. So he tells, I'm going to Dumka to meet my friend. So he says, my God, that's quite a distance. Shouldn't you have arranged for a driver? Yeah, this is very true. You shouldn't drive alone. You should have arranged for a driver. Suppose in the way you fall sick. If there is a driver, he would be a great help. Or if the car breaks down, then you can stay in the car and the driver can go and fetch a mechanic. So you need someone, so you should have got a driver. I said I was a very cautious driver myself and that I had taken such care of my car that it was still as good as new. So there is nothing to worry about. So he just brushes off the idea of the driver. Bhola Babu wished me luck and went into the house. I glanced at my wristwatch before turning the ignition key. It was 10 minutes past 11, so more than an hour delayed. He had decided to start at 10, but it's 10 minutes past 11. Although I avoided Howrah and took the Bali bridge. So he is going out of the town through the Bali bridge. It took me an hour and a half to reach Chandan Nagar. Driving through dingy towns, these first 30 miles were so dreary that the fun of a car journey was quite lost. So he doesn't feel as elated as he used to. The first 30 miles were really tiring or really boring. But from there on, as the car emerged into the open country, so when you leave these dingy roads and all that and come into the countryside, it's pleasure. The effect was magical. Where in the city did one get to see such a clear blue sky free from chimney smoke and breathe air so pure and so redolent of the smell of the earth? So yeah, you don't find these things in the city. So his heart fills with happiness. At about 12:30, as I was nearing Burdwan, I began to feel the consequences of having eaten so early. He had his breakfast quite early, heavy breakfast but quite early. And then his journey was delayed because of the visit of Uncle Mohit. So he feels hungry. I pulled up by the station which fell on the way. So whichever station comes, when he feels hungry, he stops there. Went into a restaurant and had a light meal of toast, omelette and coffee. Then I resumed my journey. I still had 35 miles to go. So he has only covered 65 miles. 20 miles from Burdwan, there was a small town called Panagarh. There I had to leave the Grand Trunk Road and take GT road, and take the road to Ilam Bazar. From Ilam Bazar, the road went via Suri and Messenger to Dumka. So this is the route which he follows. He tells us about the route also. The military camp at Panagarh had just come into view. So he could see the military camp of Panagarh at a distance when something happens. When there was a bang from the rear of my car, I had a flat tire. So he was quite confident that his car was fully checked and everything fine. But just see, puncture. I got down. I had a spare tire and could easily fit it. The thought that the other cars would go whizzing by, their occupants laughing at my predicament, was not a pleasant one. So this was an embarrassment. He was putting the spare one, but the other cars which he had left behind, they would be passing by him. And the people sitting in the car would be laughing, see, his car has got a flat tire. Nevertheless, I brought out the jack from the boot and set to work. So he starts on his work of trying to fit in. By the time I finished putting the new tire on, I was dripping with sweat. So he is perspiring badly. My watch showed 2:30. It had turned muggy in the meantime. The cool breeze which was blowing even an hour ago was making the bamboo trees sway had stopped. So it becomes a bit suffocating. Now everything was still, humid atmosphere, and as I got back into the car, I noticed a blue-black patch in the west above the treetops. So he notices a patch of cloud above the treetops. Clouds? Was a storm brewing up? So is there a storm coming? A northwester. So northwester, you'll find them frequenting during April and May. It was useless to speculate. It was useless to think on it. I must drive faster. I helped myself to some hot tea from the flask and resumed my journey. But before I could cross Ilam Bazar, I was caught in the storm. So the storm really came and he was caught in it. I had enjoyed such northwesters in the past, sitting in my room. So when you are in the comfort of your room, you can enjoy it, reading the poems of Tagore. But when you are out in a car and you have to stop the car and wait for the northwester to stop, it's really very unpleasant. And had even recited Tagore poems to myself to blend with the mood. I had no idea that driving through open country, such a northwester could strike terror into the heart. He had never thought that he would feel terrified of a northwester, but he is, because he is out in the street. Claps of thunder always make me uncomfortable. They seem to show a nasty side of nature. Yeah, this thunder, the roar of thunder and the northwester, that time nature is not really mother nature. Nature becomes very unpleasant. A vicious assault on helpless humanity. Nature that time turns very vicious. It seemed as if the shafts of lightning were all aimed at my poor ambassador, and one of them was sure to find its mark sooner or later. So he feels that the lightning, the shafts of lightning, one of them will surely hit my car. In this precarious state, I passed Suri and was well on my way to Massenjor when there was another bang, which no one could mistake for a thunderclap. No, this is not a thunderclap. This is not the sound of thunderclap. What is it? It is another tire. I realized that another of my tires had decided to call it a day. So in one day, 2 tires. It's really unthinkable. I gave up hope. It was now pouring with rain. My watch said 5:30. For the last 20 miles, I had to keep the speedometer down to 15, or I would have been well past Massenjor by now. So every time things don't go according to the plans. Had he thought that these things would crop up on his way? Where was I? Up ahead, nothing was visible, though through the rain-swept windscreen. The Viper was on, but its efforts were more frolicsome than effective. So the effects of the Viper are not really very good. It's not really effective. It being April, the sun should still be up, but it seemed more like late evening. Why? Because of the northwester, things start getting dark. I opened the door on my right slightly and looked out. What I saw didn't suggest the presence of a town, so he's stuck in between. Though I could make out a couple of buildings through the trees, there was no question of getting out of the car and exploring. But one thing was clear, there were no shops along the road as far as I could see. So he could see no shops. He could see some buildings in the distance, but no shops. And I had no more spare tires to what to do. After waiting in the car for a quarter of an hour, that means for 15 minutes, it struck me that no other vehicle had passed by all this time. So he is the lone person there in his car. Was I on the right road? There had been no mistake up to Suri. Up to Suri everything was fine, but after that did I take the wrong road? But suppose I had taken the wrong turning after that? It was not impossible in the rain was, it was raining so badly that it is not impossible that you take the wrong road, because visibility was not good. But even if I had made a mistake, it was not as if I had strayed into the jungles of Africa or South America. Wherever I was, there was no doubt I was still in the district of Birbhum, within 50 miles of Shantiniketan, and as soon as the rain stopped, my troubles would be over. I might even find a repair shop within a mile or so. So he is not really panicked. So he feels that I am not stuck in South America or Africa. So I am in the district of Birbhum only. So I can, the moment the rain stops, I will surely find out some way to escape this situation. I pulled out a packet of wills from my pocket and lit a cigarette. I recalled Bhola Babu's warning. He must have gone through the same trying experience, or how could he have given such sound advice? So now he feels most probably Bhola Babu also must have suffered something like this earlier, and that is why he gave me such a nice advice, such a perfect advice. And in future, so as he is thinking, he hears the sound of horn. Honk, honk, honk. So someone is pressing the horn. I turned round and saw a truck standing behind. Why was it blowing its horn? Was I standing right in the middle of the road? And so, yes, he was doing so. The rain had let up a little. I opened the door, got out, and found that it was no fault of the truck. So the truck driver was not at fault. His honking was justified. Why? Because he was in the middle of the road. When my tire burst, the car had swerved at an angle and was now blocking most of the road. There was no room for the truck to pass. Take the car to one side, sir. This is what the truck driver says. The sick driver had by now come out of the truck. What's the matter? He asked. A puncture? I shrugged to convey my displeasure, to my helplessness. So this is what we say. When you twitch your shoulders, we say shrugging. So he shrugged his shoulders to show his helplessness. If you could lend a hand, he said, we could move the car to one side and let you pass. Please help me. Please help me to move the car and you can go. The sick driver's helper came out too. The three of us pushed the car to one side of the road. Then I found out from the two men, that means the driver and his helper, that I was indeed on the wrong road for Dumka. This is not the road which will lead me to Dumka. I had taken a wrong turning and would have to drive 3 miles back to get back on the right track. I also learned there were no repair shops nearby. So these people are frequent goers, so they would know better. The truck went on its way, and as its noise faded away, the truth struck me like a hammer blow. So what was the truth? I had reached a dead end. There was no way I could reach Dumka that night. And I had no idea how and where I would spend the night. Yeah, this is the most horrible thought. Where will I spend the night? Inside this car? The roadside puddles were alive with a chorus of frogs. The rain had now been reduced to a light drizzle. So it's not raining so badly, it is just drizzling. I got back into the car and was about to light a second cigarette when I spotted a light through the window on my side. I opened the door again. Through the branches of a tree, I saw the rectangle of orange light. So he sees the light through the tree. So that means there is some building there. So he could find a place to live for the night. A window, just as smoke meant the presence of fire, a kerosene lamp meant the presence of a human being. So who would light a kerosene lamp unless there is some human being? There was a house nearby and there were occupants in it. I got out of the car with my torch. The window wasn't too far away and I had to, so he wanted to go and investigate and see if he can find some place to spend the night. There was a narrow footpath branching off from the main road which seemed to go in the direction of the house with the window. I locked the car and set off. I made my way, avoiding puddles as far as possible. As I passed a tamarind tree, the house came into view. So, earlier he had seen the window and the light, and now as he progresses in that direction, he finally can see the house. Well, hardly a house. It was a small cottage. So, it was not really a house, it was a small cottage with a corrugated tin roof. Through an open door, I could see a hurricane lantern and the leg of a bed. So, not everything is visible through the open door. One leg of the bed is visible and a hurricane lantern. Is anybody there? I called out. So, this is very familiar to a poem written by Walter de la Mare, the traveler or something. So, he comes and knocks at the door of a haunted house and says, is anybody there? And no one answers. So, this line is also very similar. Is anybody there? A stocky middle-aged man with a thick moustache came of the room and squinted at my torch. Squinted, why? Because he puts the torchlight to see who is coming. So, naturally he is squinting. I turned the spot away. So, he turns the torch away from the face of the man. Where are you from, sir? The man asked. So, the man wants to know, from where have you come? So, in a few words, I described my predicament. So, he describes his situation to the man. Is there a place here where I can spend the night? I asked. I shall pay for it, of course. So, don't worry, I'll pay for it. But is there a place where I can spend my night? In the Dak Bunglow, you mean? Dak Bunglow? I didn't see any Dak Bunglow. But immediately I realized my mistake. I had followed the light of the lantern and therefore had, so actually he was more focused on the light of the lantern and he came straight to it. But he didn't notice that there was a Dak Bunglow close by. Now I turned the torch to my left and immediately a large Dak Bunglow came into view. You mean that one? Yes, sir, but there is no bedding and you can't have meals there. There is no food there. I am carrying my own bedding. I hope there is a bed there. Yes, sir, a charpoy. Charpoy, those four-legged ones with ropes. And I see there is a stove lit in your room. You must be cooking your own meal. The man broke into a smile and asked if I would care for coarse chapatis prepared by him and urad ka dal cooked by his wife. So, when you are hungry, any type of food would do, whether it's coarse chapatis and urad dal, that would be a pleasure. I said it would do very nicely. So, he must be saying chalega and this fellow says chalega nahi daudega. It will really do very nicely. I liked all kinds of chapatis and urad was my favorite dal. Oh, I am very fond of urad ka dal. I don't know what the bungalow must have been like in its heydays, but now it was hardly what one understood by a Dak Bunglow. Constructed during the time of the Raj, the bedroom was large and the ceiling was high. So, all the Dak Bungalows are like that. The furniture consisted of a charpoy, a table set against the wall on one side and a chair with a broken arm. So, these are the things you find in the Dak Bunglow. So, the chowkidar or the caretaker had in the meantime lit a lantern for me. He now put it on the table. What is your name? I asked. Sukhan Ram, sir. Typically Bihari name. Without any offense, because I have been brought up in Bihar, I know all these things so nicely. Has anybody ever lived in this bungalow or I am the first one? So, am I the first? Oh no, sir, others have come too. There was a gentleman who stayed here for 2 nights last winter. I hope there are no ghosts because Dak Bungalows are mostly associated with being haunted with ghosts. I said in a jocular tone, in a joking tone. God forbid, no one has ever complained of ghosts. I must say I found his words reassuring. So yes, his words, they reassured me. If a place is spooky, the old Dak Bungalows have a reputation for being so spooky, ghostly. It will be so at all times. When was this bungalow built? I asked. Sukhan began to unroll my bedding and said, this used to be a sahib's Dak Bungalow. That means the Britishers. A sahib? Yes, sir, an indigo planter. There used to be an indigo factory close by. Now, only the chimney is standing. I knew indigo was cultivated in these parts at one time. I had seen ruins of indigo factories in Munger too in my childhood. So I think I should stop here because this is too lengthy and you all also might get bored. So I have decided to split the story into two parts. It will come in another video. The remaining part will come in another video. So this is for today, and yes, wait for my next one where I complete the